All right, let's get right into it. We're facing one of the biggest questions of our time, really. As AI makes its way onto the battlefield, who? Who gets to write the rules?
So our story actually kicks off with a really high-stakes moment. You've got a $200 million deal on the table, a top-tier AI lab, a company called Anthropic. And they had a line they just refused to cross. They were this close to a massive deal with the US military, but they walked. So you have to ask, why'd they do it?
Well, it boiled down to this one really powerful idea. Anthropic put its foot down and said, look, our system should never make kill decisions without meaningful human oversight. That was their red line. They wanted an absolute guarantee. So when the Pentagon pushed for broader access, Anthropic just said no. Deal's off.
And this is where things get really interesting, because it shows just how divided Silicon Valley is on this. You know, Anthropic drew that line in the sand, but its rival, OpenAI, they ended up moving forward with the Pentagon. It's a huge split right down the middle of the tech world. There's no consensus here at all.
So yeah, we're talking about a line in the sand. And this single corporate decision, it's not just about one company. It actually reveals a massive dilemma that the entire world is grappling with right now.
Because at the heart of this whole disagreement is a fundamental question. Should the people who create the AI be the ones to impose these hard ethical limits on how the military can use it? Is it their job, or is it the military's? Anthropic's choice really forces all of us to look that question right in the eye.
You know, to really get a handle on what's happening with AI, it helps to look back. Because this isn't the first time we've dealt with a dangerous new weapon. History actually shows us a very clear pattern.
And you can see that pattern right here. Think about it. In the 19th century, the sheer number of wounded soldiers leads to the first Geneva Convention. Then, after the horrors of chemical attacks in World War I, we get restrictions on those weapons. After the widespread suffering of World War II, we get the modern Geneva Conventions. See the pattern? A new, terrible weapon emerges, and then the world makes new rules. And today, well, today artificial intelligence is that next big question mark.
And one thing to keep in mind here, these rules were never designed to stop wars altogether. That wasn't the point. The point was to establish guardrails, to put some boundaries in place to prevent the absolute worst from happening, and to say, okay, this is acceptable, but this is not.
Okay, so let's talk about the new killer code. What is this technology that's making everyone rethink the entire rulebook? Let's break it down.
All right, so the official term, the one you'll hear at the UN, is Lethal Autonomous Weapon Systems, or LAWS for short. And the definition is everything here. We're talking about weapons that could potentially select and strike targets all on their own, without a human directly in the loop.
But let's be real, they're more often called something else. Killer robots. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But that term really cuts to the core of what everyone's worried about, this idea of a machine making the ultimate decision to kill.
And that leads us to maybe the biggest ethical knot of all. What happens when the one pulling the trigger isn't a person? Lawyers call this the accountability gap, and it's a huge problem.
I mean, think about how things work right now. A human soldier makes a decision on the battlefield. Simple enough. If that decision breaks the rules of war, well, there's a system for that. The soldier, their commanders, they can be held responsible.
Okay, but if an autonomous weapon makes that same mistake, who's to blame? Seriously, who do you hold responsible?
And that's the whole issue, isn't it? Is it the military commander who deployed it? Maybe. Is it the engineers who wrote the algorithm, maybe years ago in some lab? Or, and this is the weird one, is the machine itself responsible? The bottom line is, the current rulebook has no clear answer. None.
So, with all this confusion, it's no wonder the world is trying to figure out a path forward. And right now, it looks like there are basically 3 ways this could go.
And just to be clear, this isn't some small academic debate. We're talking about more than 120 countries, right now, discussing new rules for these autonomous weapons. The pressure is definitely on to get something done before the tech leaves the law in the dust.
So, what are the options? Well, path number 1 is a total ban. Just prohibit all fully autonomous weapons, period. Treat them like chemical weapons. Path 2 is to basically say, you know what, the laws we already have are good enough to cover AI. And path number 3 is kind of the middle road. Sure, let AI do analysis, but a human, a person, has to be the one to make that final kill decision, every single time.
So the question becomes, can we make rules before a disaster? And with that big picture in mind, let's circle back to where we started.
back to that choice made in Silicon Valley.
When you think about it, Anthropic's choice to walk away from that deal was basically them casting their vote in this whole global debate. By insisting on guardrails and meaningful human control, they were planting their flag firmly in that third option we talked about.
And this really gets at the heart of the challenge. The old pattern is clear, right? A new weapon emerges, disaster strikes, and then the world writes the rules. But with AI, there's a new challenge, and maybe a new opportunity. The AI emerges, but the creators themselves are building in safeguards. So the big question becomes, can we write the rules before a disaster happens for once?
But that brings us to where we are right now. And for now, the guardrails for AI, they aren't being written by diplomats. They're still in the hands of the companies actually building the technology.
Which leaves us with this final massive question. Who should write the final rules for war in the age of AI? Should it be the creators, the commanders, or the diplomats? There's no easy answer.